Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right back into the year 1865 to really understand the severe economic challenges the South faced after the Civil War. Because you see, it wasn't just about the end of the battles on the battlefield, it was the dawn of an incredibly complex era. The war fundamentally shattered the way the entire Southern economy worked, leaving behind this enduring legacy of hardship that we are going to unpack together today.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, a ruined Southern economy. Second, the sharecropping debt trap. Third, the risks of cotton dependence. Fourth, rebuilding with wise counsel. And finally, why morality matters here.
All right, let's get into Section 1, a ruined Southern economy. 1865 post-war challenges.
Imagine walking through the South in 1865. The scale of devastation was just staggering. We aren't just talking about a few damaged buildings here. The physical and financial destruction was massive. Bridges and railroads were completely destroyed, factories were laid in ruins, and farms, which were literally the heartbeat of the Southern economy, were left in complete disrepair. And with Southern banks having completely collapsed during the war, there was practically zero capital. And you know what no money means, right? No investment to rebuild. It turned grinding poverty into a daily reality for millions of people. Rebuilding from this level of destruction was just a painfully slow and arduous process.
This brings up a really important question for us to consider. Why were railroads so critical to Southern recovery? Well, think of railroads as the main arteries of an economy. Since they were completely destroyed, it became nearly impossible to move goods and people. I mean, even if you managed to grow crops on a struggling farm, you couldn't efficiently connect your goods to national markets to actually sell them. Without those transportation arteries, the economic blood simply couldn't flow, paralyzing any chance of a swift recovery.
Moving on to Section 2, the sharecropping debt trap, a new labor system.
So before the war, plantation owners relied entirely on enslaved labor. But after emancipation, both landowners and freedmen had to drastically adjust to a new reality. Because so many newly freed people lacked land, tools, or financial resources, they had to enter into sharecropping agreements just to survive. Under the system, workers without land or tools farmed a landowner's property in exchange for a share of the crop. It was a massive, massive shift to a completely new system of supposedly free labor.
Let's walk through exactly how a seemingly simple trade became an absolute nightmare. Step 1. Workers had to borrow their seeds, tools, and living supplies at incredibly high interest rates just to begin farming. Step 2. They performed the grueling physical labor to farm the land and actually harvest those crops. And then Step 3. Once the harvest was finally sold, that massive interest and accumulated debt just completely canceled out whatever profit they might have made from their share. It was a vicious trap. Farmers could almost never pay off what they owed, keeping them stuck year after year.
There was this stark, heartbreaking contrast between expectation and reality. The idea on paper was simple and seemingly fair, right? A trade of hard labor for a portion of the crops. But the reality? Through dishonest bookkeeping by landowners and those sky-high interest rates, it became an inescapable cycle of debt. This deeply flawed and corrupt system ensured that vulnerable, newly freed people remained deeply dependent and financially impoverished, no matter how hard they worked the land. All right, Section 3, cotton dependence risks, danger of a single crop. So, why did depending on cotton cause such massive problems? You might be thinking, hey, growing an enormous amount of a famous cash crop sounds like a fantastic idea. But economically speaking, tying an entire region's survival to one single agricultural product is an incredibly dangerous financial risk. Here's exactly what happens. When an entire region plants the exact same crop, eventually way too much cotton is grown, and the market just floods. The basic law of supply and demand kicks in immediately, and that surplus drives prices right into the ground. It was a tragic irony. The harder these farmers worked to produce more cotton, the less that cotton was actually worth. Instantly, this slashed profits for those already struggling farmers, pushing them even deeper into that inescapable debt trap we just discussed. They were producing more but earning far less. Let's shift gears to Section 4, rebuilding with wise counsel, a biblical perspective. Now that we understand the harsh historical facts, I want us to consider the profound wisdom in Proverbs 15:22. Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. Recovering from deep, systemic hardship required far more than just planting seeds and repairing bridges. It demanded immense wisdom, careful planning, and seeking good moral counsel to build a foundation that would actually last. True recovery meant creating economic systems that actively protected the poor rather than exploiting them. It meant promoting honesty in business, like actively avoiding the dishonest bookkeeping that was so prevalent back then. It meant helping people rebuild their lives with genuine dignity and actively working to avoid unfair cycles of dependence. Unfortunately, systems like sharecropping did the exact opposite of these principles, which severely stunted the entire region's recovery.
This really demands deep reflection from us. How can wise leadership help communities rebuild in ways that are fair and honorable? Just imagine for a second how incredibly different the entire Reconstruction era could have been if leaders and landowners had prioritized human dignity, honest counsel, and fairness over short-term exploitation and greed. The economic trajectory of millions of lives would have completely shifted. Which brings us to our final point, Section 5, Why Morality Matters Here, Education and Choices.
The absolute crucial takeaway from all this history is remarkably simple. Education without morality will hurt. As the HeroesMart Academy Godly Learners series reminds us, there is simply no point in being smart, educated, and capable if you just use that education to exploit others. Think about those educated landowners. They understood math, contracts, and agriculture perfectly well, but they used that intelligence to trap uneducated sharecroppers. Education is a powerful tool, for sure, but without a moral compass, it easily becomes a weapon.
We're going to conclude our explainer today with a really powerful thought. Romans 8:6-7 promises peace of mind to everyone who keeps their mind spiritual. It's a truth that echoes right through history. As you move forward in your own studies, remember that aligning your education with a spiritual, moral mindset is the truest path to lasting peace and honorable leadership. So I want to leave you with this final provocative question. When you look at the challenges in our world today, are you going to use your education simply to gain a personal advantage, or are you going to use your knowledge and moral compass to build systems that actually uplift others?